Hey everybody, it's Kathy from the Macedon Public Library, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Today is the day that all American Irish people go crazy. I do not have a drop of Irish blood in me, but I was raised by someone who absolutely adores everything Irish. That is hence my name, Kathleen. And I have my Irish tenors on, and I'm going to talk to you, playing some music in the background. And I want to talk to you today about the beauty of Ireland as far as books and why people love to read books about Ireland. It's the beauty, the green, everything's green, their lyrical language, the thatched cottages, their fairies, their leprechauns, their banshees, and their witches. Everybody, it's just a magical thing that everybody is, oh, Ireland, Ireland. I have not had a chance to go there yet. I plan to go there in the next couple of years. My daughter has been, and the pictures just made us fall in love with it. And my German husband was like, we're going to Ireland. So I've got everybody convinced. So I want to talk to you about all kinds of books that I have here. Some I've read, some have been recommended to me and are on my list to read. Most I've read. We're going to start with The Princes of Ireland. Excuse me. We're going to start with The Princes of Ireland. I don't know if you can see it. It's by Edward Rutherford, and it's part of the Dublin Saga. This is an epic historical novel about love, family, political intrigue over 11 centuries. This particular book ends in 1534. The author does just impeccable research. It's very much like reading a book by Ken Follett or James Michener, who I grew up reading and just adored. This is his first book. It is fantastic. And then the second book is The Rebels of Ireland, which continues the saga for the next 400 years to get Ireland's independence. So that's the first book I wanted to recommend to you. And of course, the second, because you'll love that book and you'll want to read the follow-up. Then this one is called Galway Bay, and it's by Mary Pat Kelly. Could you get more Irish than that? This book talks about the tragedy and the triumph of Ireland and the Americans coming to Ireland. I mean, coming to America. Let's start all over again. The tragedies that happen in Ireland that make those Irish come to America. It captures the life of fishermen and tenement farmers. And let me see what else I've written here, a couple of other things. And the solace that they find in their ancient faith, songs, stories, and their communal celebrations. And then the blight hits the potatoes and causes the famine. It hits them 3 out of 4 years. And so they have to leave. And so then this book, they join the 2 million refugees, Irish refugees that emigrate to America. And then the end of the book will take place in America. So another epic, as you can see, very good story for you to want if you're interested in that. The Haunted Ground. I am so sorry this woman only wrote 4 of these in the series. Erin Hart wrote this wonderful little series, and I wish she had written a lot more. It takes an American pathologist and pairs her with an Irish archaeologist. And they solve modern and ancient mysteries. Let me see, Amazon says it's meticulously crafted and resonating with traditional music and folklore. Haunted Ground celebrates Ireland's turbulent history, revealing the eternal subliminal connections between past and present in a riveting novel that heralds the arrival of a bright new crime writing star. I loved this series. This particular book starts out with they find a dead body of a woman beheaded in a peat bog. And because of the peat, it has preserved the body. And so they don't know at first whether this is someone who's been dead for 10 years, 20 years, or 200 years. So it's just I was really intrigued by it. I loved everything about it. And there's also Lake of Sorrows, False Mermaid, and the Book of Killowen, which just, like I said, I wish she had continued writing more. This is The Yellow House by Patricia Falvey. This is a love story, and it covers well, it has a historical setting. It's taking place, the issue throughout this book is where the issue of home rule hits the Catholics against the Protestants. And this woman, Eileen O'Neill, her family is torn apart during and after World War I. And she goes back to her home and she's trying to bring the family back together. And of course, she has two men in her lives. One is an IRA fighter under Michael Collins, and the other one is a British Army officer opposed to the violence that is happening. So there's a lot going on in this book. It's also really good. I wouldn't recommend awful books, would I? Now I have just some novels. Those were novels. These are more light. Maeve Binchy. Has Ireland had an author, a modern author as great as Maeve Binchy? I have read everything this woman wrote. I was so sad when she passed away. This one is called Copper Beach. It's just one of the ones I really, really liked. It takes place in a little town where lovers carve their names on the old Copper Beach outside the schoolhouse. This just really captures the stories of a little town with all the thatched roofs on the. It's really nice, but of course, not everything in the quiet village is what it seems. And the New York Times says that it is as soothing as a cup of tea, and it is. So I recommend that you read this one. And then she wrote Quentins. And the theory behind this is it easy or can it possible to tell the story of a generation through a restaurant? The restaurant's in Dublin, and there's all kinds of stories. It has 1,000 stories to tell, they say, and the tales of love, betrayal, revenge, success, failure, everything is told in the walls of this restaurant. But there's other books that have similar and that carries on some of the same characters, although every book is different. There's The Scarlet Feather and Chestnut Street, and these Maeve Binchy is trying to show everyone that Dublin is just a small village and everyone knows everyone. And she carries that theme throughout. And just anything by Maeve Binchy you should read, because the woman was just fabulous. Then there's Andrew M. Greeley, who wrote Irish Gold and a bunch of, this is the first in a whole series, a mystery series that he wrote. Andrew Greeley was a priest. These stories tend to be not so priestly, but I liked this series for the most part. I read most of them or all of them. I think the earlier ones were better. The last ones maybe not quite as good, but this is the first one. And it introduces us to an American named Dermot Coyne. He's a Chicagoan, and he meets the beautiful and fey Irish woman named Nuala McGrail. And if you don't know what fey means, it means that they have a connection to the other world. And so in this one, Dermot's in Ireland to try to find out why his maternal grandparents left in 1921. They fled, and they've never talked about it. And he wants to find out why, and he goes back and he researches the story, which I found very interesting. I read this many, many years ago, and I enjoyed it. I learned a lot about Michael Collins and the fight to be independent. So I enjoyed that one. And like I said, the first books are really good. The last few, maybe not so much, but you might like them more than I did, but I really loved the beginning. And then we have Nora Roberts, who writes her trilogies and loves to go to Ireland. So this is the Irishborn series. This particular book has all 3 novels in it. And it follows the typical Nora Roberts formula, but these take place in Ireland. The characters are very good. It brings the countryside to life, and it's about 3 modern sisters bound by the timeless beauty of Ireland. So recommended. The 3 books are Born in Fire, Born in Ice, and Born in Shame, which is called the Irishborn series. And not to forget more about Nora Roberts, she also wrote this the Cousins O'Dwyer trilogy. Again, typical formula. Just look at this picture. So great. This one has witches, ancient Ireland, and ancient evil that must be destroyed. Now, I remember when this book first came out at the library, it just flew off the shelves. So many people love these books. So there's this one, then there's Shadow Spell, and then there's Black Magic. So again, great Nora Roberts books. Now, if you want to talk about some real books, Ireland, although we romanticize it, is not always the happiest of places. Americans see it through green tinted glasses, I guess we'd say. But there are some fabulous nonfiction books about Ireland. I mean, the others that I talked about, some of those Princess of Ireland and stuff, talk about the history, but those are novels. This is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. When it first came out, of course, everybody read it, and again, flew off the shelves. Not a happy book. Frank McCourt's, it's his memoir about his childhood. He was born in Brooklyn. His parents came over from Ireland. He was born in Brooklyn, and then they go back to live in Limerick. His family is poor. His mother struggles to feed the family. His father drinks his paycheck when he works, and but he nourishes Frank on his fantastical stories of Irish heroes. And well, there's a quote here in the beginning. Let me read it to you. It says, "When I look back on my childhood, I wonder how I managed to survive it all. It was, of course, a miserable childhood. The happy childhood is hardly worth your while. Worse than the ordinary miserable childhood, it is the miserable Irish childhood. And worse yet, it is the miserable Irish Catholic childhood." And that captures this book. So, but a good read. And everyone who loves Ireland should read it. And then this is a fairly new book. It came out last year, March of 19. I read it last year. I got it as a gift for a birthday gift during the lockdown that we were in, and I read it. It is the history of the Troubles of Ireland. If you don't know, the Troubles took place, it's 30 years between the late 1960s and the late 1990s. It's the conflict over Northern Ireland remaining with the UK or leaving to join the United Ireland. And in 1972, and I remember, again, because we were all alive during this, I remember, all the bombings in Ireland was not a safe place and you would never go to Northern Ireland and all those things. So in 1972, a 38-year-old mother of 10 is abducted from her home by masked intruders and never seen again. And everyone in the neighborhood knows that the IRA abducted her. But in the climate of fear and paranoia, no one would speak of it. And so that's the background story in here, and it goes throughout the whole book. But you also learn about a society immersed in guerrilla warfare, IRA members embittered by a peace that fell far short of their goal of the United Ireland, and left them wondering whether the killings they committed were justified acts of war or simply murder. I love this book. So I would highly recommend it. Again, Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. So I recommend that book very much. And then the last three books I want to talk about, just wrap up everything. This is Tana French Broken Harbor. It's one of her Dublin Murder Squad books. This is number 4 in the series. And it was recommended to me that you don't have to read them in order. Because, let me just say, they all involve murders in and around Dublin, but the main character in each book, the detective in each book, is different. There's overlapping, they're all in there, but they're different. So you don't have to read them in order. And they said this is one of the best, especially one to start with. And you might not like some of them, but it doesn't. Some of the detectives, but it doesn't matter because she won't be in the book next time. So they highly recommend this one to start with, and because this is the most classic thriller in the series, and it's about the murder of a family in one of the half-abandoned luxury apartment developments that litter Ireland. And There's, I think, 6 in the series. Very good reading. This is called The Stolen Child by Lisa Carey. There's other books called The Stolen Child. If you want to read about Ireland, you have to read the one by Lisa Carey. This was a very odd and different book, but I enjoyed it very much. It takes place on an island off the coast of Ireland, and it's a fictional island called St. Bridget's, but it's very much like the Blasket Islands, which they eventually evacuate in the 1950s because it's not a safe place for these people, for anyone to live. And so I learned a lot about that kind of a history of the Blasket Islands and things like that. I'm always loving to learn those things. This book takes place in 1959, and the inhabitants, they are supposed to move to the mainland, but not all of them want to go, especially this one mother who is waiting for her changeling child to be returned to her. So you see what we're talking about here. And before they move, an American comes and lives on the islands because she inherits her uncle's house, and she's there looking for a holy well rumored to grant miracles. So it's steeped in Irish history. It's mesmerizing descent into old world beliefs. Very different, but I was intrigued and I really enjoyed it. And then the last book I want to introduce to you is called Ireland by Frank Delaney. And back in the day, storytellers used to travel around Ireland, and if you give them a room and a meal, they would stay for a few days, and they would have all the neighbors come over, and they would tell stories of the history and folk tales and all of that came from Ireland. And one such person comes in 1951 to this 9-year-old boy's house, and he is mesmerized by these stories. And so this book is the story of his 12-year search for the storyteller that came to his house. And it also has the storyteller's stories, the myths and fables and the history that the storyteller tells. So it's a nice little combination of both and really captures all that magical history. So those are the books that I wanted to recommend. I know I threw a lot at you all at once, so if you weren't jotting them all down, well, you can just watch me again and just freeze it. You don't have to listen. All right. So you have a happy St. Patrick's Day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.